But as Angel and I have done coaching over the last roughly 10 years, and we have done a lot of relationship coaching, we've seen 4 behaviors, 4 kind of core umbrella philosophies and behaviors, ways people interact with each other, especially when our arguments arise. So there's a disagreement, there's an argument, and these 4 toxic behaviors seem to pop up again and again and again. They're super, super common. So I want to cover each one of these with you, and I don't want you to look at this like, oh, this is what my spouse or this is what my friend is doing to me. I want you to just look at this objectively and think about, does this sound at all familiar, right?
And it's important as we go through these behaviors, we're so quick to point the finger and be like, that's exactly what's been done to me. These people are doing these behaviors, goodness. I want you to look at both sides of the coin. I want you to also look at these and say, okay, have I been guilty of some of these behaviors? Because I'm going to tell you, I've been guilty of all 4 of them. Marc's been guilty of all 4 of them. And I'm sure you guys will be able to identify, oh wow, okay, I've done this a time or 2. So it's not a bad thing that you've participated in some of these behaviors, but now that you know this is what could be contributing to a toxic relationship, now that you know better, you can do better.
Right, without a doubt. All the stuff discussed here in this whole conference today, nobody is above this. All the speakers, everyone here, experts that we've learned from, I mean, this is a constant practice. So yeah, we're definitely not above any of this. That is for sure. It's a battle that we all deal with. Toxic behavior number 1, we sort of touched on in our previous talk. Angel mentioned, when she was thinking about her sister, she was thinking, oh, she's the most selfish human being in the world. Not she just is selfish sometimes, right? Condemning a person's entire character. When complaints and disagreements snowball into global attacks on the person and not just on their decisions or behavior, this spells trouble. For example, they didn't call me when they said they would because they forgot, but because they are a horrible, horrible, wretched human being, right? There's a big difference there. And so it's when we take, and obviously, with your sister, she can be selfish sometimes, right? And that could be a recurring situation. All of us have those quirks about us. But if there's something about a spouse or a friend or a family member that bothers you, it's important to realize that, okay, it's this part of them that bothers me. It's not all of them, and they are not that human being.
Yeah. It's important to acknowledge and recognize that it's not the person, it's the behavior. So my mistake was saying that my sister is selfish. Well, no, her behavior is selfish.
Sometimes.
Yes. So when you're thinking of it like that, you're opening yourself from not getting trapped in that tunnel vision of just identifying that one person with their flaws. So don't identify that one person with this, but identify their behavior. Sometimes they do this.
Exactly. Number 2 is hateful gestures. This is so super common. Frequent name-calling, threats, eyes rolling, belittling people, mockery. In whatever form, gestures like these are poisonous to a relationship because they convey hate, and it's virtually impossible to resolve a relationship situation with anyone when they constantly feel like you hate them. A lot of times this isn't even as obvious as just a quick eye rolling. This could be, Angel shows up late, and so it bothers me, but instead of talking to her about it, I go, well, I'm just going to be late next time. I'll show her, She may not even, the interesting thing about that though, is that she may have been late for her own reasons, right? Something's happening at work, something's happening with Mac, who knows? And it has nothing to do with me at all, and yet I feel insulted by it, and so therefore my instinct is like, well, I'm gonna get her back, right? Or I'm gonna practice one of these hateful gestures without having an open conversation with her and communicating my point about, oh, I understand you have things going on, but please, kind of upsets me when you do that. It's a big, hateful gestures are a breakdown of communication. They're the wrong kind of communication.
Yeah, and let's be honest, hateful gestures, they're easy, right? You just react, you get mad, you say a couple words, you call them names, you roll your eyes, it's easy. It takes work to think about what's going on through your mind and think before you speak. Is this name calling and these gestures, is it going to help move this relationship forward? Does it help, does it do anything? Does it make progress, or does it keep digging a deeper and deeper hole? And hateful gestures also aren't always so obvious. They're not just name calling and rolling your eyes. They could be little slight jabs that you're doing. So say, for example, Marc made a mistake, and it was a big mistake and it was really bad. But I chose to forgive him, Okay, let's imagine I chose to forgive him and we are going to move forward. But when I get reminded of that mistake because of a situation, am I going to continue to throw that in his face and say, oh, well, you did that before, you're probably going to do it again? Like, if I'm continuing to throw that in his face and make him constantly feel as though he's got to earn my love back, that he's got to keep working, that I'm here and he's here, that's a hateful gesture. So it's not always so obvious, but sometimes we participate in those types of scenarios.
Yeah. I mean, we often classify this as when you are using someone's past mistakes to justify your present righteousness. That's a big no-no. And this can relate to very touchy and tricky situations. So, I mean, to a couple, and somebody cheats. Now, there's a decision there. Do we want to take this relationship and do we want to move forward with it? And maybe the answer is no. But if the answer is yes, and one person decides to forgive the other, if you say, I am going to forgive this person, then your actions need to respect that decision. They need to back that decision up. Because if you say, I forgive you, and then 6 months down the road, you remind them of the fact that you cheated on me, right? And then a year down the road, you remind them, you're a cheater. And for the rest of your relationship, it's constantly, they're down here and you're up here looking down at them. They're always going to feel like they're not enough, right? And it doesn't justify their behavior at that one point in time, but it means if you want this relationship to thrive, if you want it to grow and get past that, you can't possibly be looking down at them for the rest of your life, right? That just doesn't work.
And we're not saying that thought's not going to cross your mind, okay?
No.
Just because you forgive them doesn't mean you forget the act. So just because when that situation does arise that reminds you, you can think about it, but just know that you're choosing to move forward. You're choosing to move past that. You're both working together to get past that situation. And so if you're just going to continue to throw it in their face, you're not making progress. You're not helping, because both people need to work when it comes to this.
Remember, who would I be without that thought? How would the communication be without that thought in my head, right? Number 3 is denying responsibility. An obvious point, but when you deny responsibility in every relationship dispute, you're just simply saying, I blame you, right? You're in effect saying the problem is never me, it's always you, and this denial of responsibility just escalates the argument because there's a breakdown of communication. This is a tricky one too, because you'll say, well, this person's doing this to me all the time and their behavior is truly toxic, so how is that my responsibility at all? The reframe is, are you choosing to be in the relationship? Despite that toxic behavior, are you choosing to be in? Because if you're not, then you're not in a relationship. But if you're choosing to be in, then it is partially your responsibility. Because only until you take that responsibility can you possibly have a positive conversation with them. Can you possibly figure out what the next best step for the relationship is for yourself, right? If you don't take that responsibility, you're giving your power away and you're simply saying, I'm the victim here. So it is your responsibility. No, their behavior and the way they're acting is not you doing that, but it is your responsibility to own the fact that you're choosing to be in it and that you can only make progress by taking ownership of the fact that you're choosing to be in it. The next best step can only come from that realization.
Yeah. And if you're constantly pointing fingers, that's like saying, okay, it's all you. And if you're pointing fingers, then it's as if you're not even in the relationship, but you are, because it takes two to be in a relationship. So you need to take responsibility for your role in the relationship.
Exactly. Number 3, the silent treatment. Super, super common. So oftentimes our initial human instinct when we have some kind of dispute is to not talk about it and just, I can't take this person and I'm going to look the other way, right? It happens to the best of us. I'm guilty of this. Angel's guilty of this sometimes. The key thing to realize here is that it doesn't solve anything. It literally removes the other person emotionally from that conversation and thus eventually from the relationship if it's a constant thing. Like hateful gestures, the person, Angel might do something and I give her the silent treatment, I give her the cold shoulder. The reason she did what she did that upset me may have nothing to really do with me. She doesn't even realize that what she did was that bad. And so I'm giving her this silent treatment and not communicating. And over time, she's just withdrawing from the relationship, right? She doesn't even understand why I'm being that way. She looks at me as being toxic. I'm looking at her as like she's being toxic. There's no progress at all.
And I'm totally guilty of this one. When I get upset, I tend to like hold all of my emotions inside, and I don't communicate them out. I just let it boil inside. I go do something else. I distract myself. But that wasn't helping anything. And so what I had to learn to do is I can still take that time to collect my thoughts and to calm down, but then I need to express those thoughts. So I've made it a rule that I need to make sure that if it's between us, that before we go to bed, I need to let him know how I feel. Like, this is how I feel and this is what happened. So that silent treatment, there are times I've been silent and Marc has no clue why. He's like, oh, maybe she's tired, He has
Big
no
time.
clue. So the whole
There
reason
have
that
been
I'm being
many times.
silent is because I'm upset with
getting
him.
the silent treatment
and he
just
doesn't
before
even know
bed.
it.
And
And
I'm
he
like,
doesn't even know it. So it's like,
I'm just snuggling in, I'm like, oh, okay, the elbow's there,
And then he realizes I'm pushing him off and then something's wrong. But it really is. Like, the silent treatment is how you're dealing with it, but the other person has no clue. There's no communication there. And if there's no communication, there can be no progress.
Right. So those are the four most common behaviors that we see in relationship issues.
And I'm sure you guys can actually look at this and say you've participated in some of these behaviors. So I think we need to just take responsibility and say, yes, this has been done to me, but also I have participated in some of this behavior. And like I said, now that you know these are some of the behaviors that can contribute to toxic relationships, now you know better. Now you can do better.